Chapter 1 of A Red Wallflower by Susan Warner. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. A Red Wallflower by Susan Warner. Note to the reader. The story following is again in its whole chain of skeleton facts a true story. I beg to observe in particular that the denominational feeling described in both families, with the ways it showed itself, is part of the truth of the story, and no invention of mine. S. W. Martlayers Rock, June 25th, 1884. Chapter 1. After Dandelions. It is now a good many years ago that an English family came over from the old country and established itself in one of the small villages that are scattered along the shore of Connecticut. Why they came was not clearly understood, neither was it at all to be gathered from their way of life or business. Business properly they had none, and their way of life seemed one of placid contentment and unenterprising domestic pleasure. The head of the family was a retired army officer, now past the prime of his years, tall, thin, grey, and grave, but a gentleman through and through. Everybody liked Colonel Gainsborough, although nobody could account for a man of his age leading what seemed such a profitless life. He was doing really nothing, staying at home with his wife and his books. Why had he come to Connecticut at all? If he lived for pleasure, surely his own country would have been a better place to seek it. Nobody could solve this riddle. That Colonel Gainsborough had anything to be ashamed of, or anything to be afraid of, entered nobody's head for a moment. Fear or shame were unknown to that grave, calm, refined face. The whisper got about, how it is impossible to say, that his leaving home had been occasioned by a disagreement with his relations. It might be so. No one could ask him, and the colonel never volunteered to still curiosity on the subject. The family was small. Only a wife and one little girl came with the colonel to America, and they were attended by only 2 old retainers, a man and a woman. They hired no other servants after their arrival, which, however, struck nobody as an admission of scantness of means. According to the views and habits of the countryside, 2 people were quite enough to look after 3, the man outside and the woman inside the house. Christopher Bounder took care of the garden and the cow, and cut and made the hay from 1 or 2 little fields, and Mrs. Barker, his sister, was a very capable woman indeed, and quite equal to the combined duties of housekeeper, cook, lady's maid, and housemaid, which she fulfilled to everybody's satisfaction, including her own. However, after 2 or 3 years in Seaforth, these duties were somewhat lessened. The duties of Mrs. Barker's hands, that is, for her head had more to do. Mrs. Gainsborough, who had been delicate and failing for some time, at last died, leaving an almost inconsolable husband and daughter behind her. I might say with truth quite inconsolable, for at the time I speak of, a year later than Mrs. Gainsborough's death, certainly comfort had come to neither father nor daughter. It was one morning in springtime. Mrs. Barker stood at the door of her kitchen and called to her brother to come in to breakfast. Christopher slowly obeyed the summons, leaving his spade stuck upright in the bed he was digging, and casting loving looks as he came at the budding gooseberry bushes. He was a typical Englishman, ruddy, fair-skinned, blue-eyed, of very solid build, and showing the national tendency to flesh. He was a handsome man, and not without a sufficiency of self-consciousness, both as regarding that and other things. Mrs. Barker was a contrast, for she was very plain, some years older than her brother, and of rather spare habit, though large frame. Both faces showed sense, and the manner of both indicated that they knew their own minds. "Season's late," observed Mrs. Barker, as she stepped back from the door and lifted her coffee-pot on the table. "Uncommon late," answered her brother. "Buds on them gooseberry bushes, only just showing green. Now everything will be coming all together in a heap in 2 weeks more. That's the way of this blessed climate. And then when everything
Sample complete. Ready to continue?